Hi guys, hope you're doing well. This is a continuation, part two of the Antichrist video. So, get a chance, please watch video one, and this is the second one of that. So we'll see if we can get the rest of it in. Not that it may have to be a video three, but we'll try to get it all in this one if we can. Anyway, we kind of left off in Second Thessalonians chapter 2, where we're talking about the Antichrist, who basically is claiming to be God man in essence, and that he wants to be worshipped. So we know there has to be a temple for him to go into. So we should be looking again for signs and things. So one of those would be preparation for the rebuilding of the temple, which means you have to have the restoration of the Jewish people, which would fall into the category of probably Joel chapter 3, verse 1 and 2, which means that we're looking for the restoration of Jerusalem, which has already happened in 2017, with Trump announcing the restoration or acknowledgement of the Jewish sovereign control over Jerusalem. And then we're looking at the fulfillment of the second part of that, which would be sovereign control over Judea, which they're currently talking about with the annexation of Judea and Samaria. So those are things we should be looking for, right? As signs that Jesus told us to be looking, to be ready, to be alert. So for us to do that as good Christians and followers of Christ, his disciples, so that we can inform our fellow brothers and sisters, and also inform the lost world of where they're headed, because they're not believing in the truth, which we know Jesus is the truth, the way, the truth, and life, that no one comes to the Father except through him. So that's what we should be doing as good ambassadors for the Lord. We're called to be as ambassadors to preach reconciliation between God and man through faith in Jesus Christ, right? 2 Corinthians chapter 5. So 17 through 20 and 21. So anyway, those are the ones that we want to be doing. And to be those good stewards means we need to be studying all the scripture, not just some of it. And one of the things we should be studying, obviously, is what we're in right now, which is preparing ourselves to know looking for the Antichrist's, the signs of that. And people often said, and I brought up in the previous video of this, hey, I'm looking for Jesus Christ. I'm not looking for the Antichrist. Well, if you read through 2 Thessalonians, it's pretty clear. Number one, we're going to see the apostasy. I think we're seeing that take place right now. We'll see more of it, but I think that's already happening. I touched base on that in the previous video, but it's already happening. You can also look at other verses, but in general, it's referring to that. 1 Timothy 4 talks about that as well. This falling away, this people who have turned away from the truth. Well, we're seeing that, and I think it's increasing dramatically throughout the world. So false teaching within the church, people who are embracing every type of thing that really opposes Scripture. So yeah, we should be looking at that. I mean, you see ordination of women, ordination of homosexuals. I mean, you got a whole list of things that are happening completely diametrically opposed. Well, something has to be seriously wrong when you start seeing that take place within the church, because it obviously says not to do those things, and that those things are not the unforgivable sin. We obviously love them all, but we need to follow the teaching and guidance of what God's word is. And God's word should be what? We need to be a holy and righteous people, walking in righteousness on a daily basis, repenting when we do sin, striving not to sin, but seeking perfection to be like God, be perfect as the Father is perfect, knowing that we have an advocate with the Father who, when we do stumble and fall, that we have him to stand there and be our mediator between God and man, which is what he is, the Son of God, the second person of the Trinity, who is there to, he made complete reconciliation for man. He can simply say, hey, this is mine. His sin has been paid in full. And there's no amount of works on my part that's going to make any difference. But my trusting and leaning on him and him alone is what makes me assured of my salvation. And the same should be for you if you're a Christian. And if you're not a Christian, then you're trusting in your own goodness, your own works. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the Bible is very clear on what's going to take place in the great white throne judgment. Those will be judged according to their own works. It's not good. You want to be trusted in the Lord, trust me. Believe me, and believe the word of God. So anyway, So we should be looking at, and it clearly says that apostasy will come. Let no one in any way deceive you. And I'm reading for 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first. The man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. So we clearly going to see the apostasy take place, which I think we're seeing that right now. I think we're seeing the political alignment of nations and so forth. But we're also seeing, or will see, the next thing after that is clearly the man of lawlessness is revealed. So we should be looking for that. So before it says, let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come first. And I think he's referring to the previous two verses, which is our gathering together to be with the Lord. So clearly I am a pre-tribulationist. I simply believe that the Antichrist will be revealed prior to the tribulation. Now, some people will disagree with that. Notable people, well-known people will disagree with that, but I think they're wrong. And I think there's very good reasons why. Watch my rapture video. You'll understand why. I go into it, especially as I get into the second video of that. You'll see why I think I make a very strong case for a pre-tribulation rapture. And that we will be here to see the apostasy, the revealing of the Antichrist. And I don't think the revealing of the Antichrist is simply, like some try to say, Daniel 9:27, which he declares a covenant for 7 years, and in the midst of that, he goes in and declare, embrace that covenant. Well, we don't have to wait that long. I think the entire tribulation is the judgment of God, clearly, and I can get into other things. I won't waste time on that, but watch the rapture videos. It'll make perfect sense to you why. At the end of the day, you're gonna probably agree with me that you're gonna be a pre-tribulation rapture person after that. You're gonna be a pre-tribulationist. But basically, I believe that we'll be here to see the apostasy, which I think we're seeing the early stages of it, and it's increasing exponentially daily. It seems like all the time you see people walking away from the faith, saying that they are leaving, they can't believe in Christianity any longer, things like that. We're seeing that happen all the time. And then I think we're going to see the revealing of Antichrist, which is very soon. That means he has to be in power he has to already be in power for him to confirm a covenant for 7 years anyway. Now, this covenant that he's going to make, I think, would just be what it is, a temporary peace agreement that he will say, that he will confirm. Now, that means either he's fully in power or he's in some kind of political position to confirm that agreement with the nation of Israel, with its neighbors. And this will be a temporary one to say, hey, the peace agreement's only for 7 years, which makes perfect sense to me. We'll try it out for 7 years and see if everybody agrees to it and holds to it. And if everybody agrees to it, then we'll continue on to step number 2 or step number 3. But step number 2 and number 3 never comes, because in the midst of it, he breaks it and he goes in and declares himself to be God and goes into the temple and declares himself to be God. Well, that means that in this peace agreement somehow, most likely either, I still think the original temple's in the original city of David near the Gihon Springs and so forth, that other people have, really good people have studied about, I think it's Kananuk or something like that, Kanuk or something like that, how he pronounces his last name. Did some really good study on that, but there's a lot of other ones that I've looked at as well, and and Scripture itself, I think affirms it. So either they'll build it there, and there's a lot of stuff happening. If you get a chance, you can look up City of David's website, and you can go there. You can do it on YouTube as well, and just go there, and you'll see it. It's almost daily. They're finding stuff there. They're really doing a lot of stuff. I think they're going to find that the temple is actually in the city of David, just on the north side of the city of David, south of the Temple Mount. That's my take on it. This may coalesce when it comes to this final peace agreement, which I think we're seeing that happen right now, which is kind of takes us where we want to be, as it were. So if we're looking for the Antichrist coming, if we knew the apostle is going to come and we see the Antichrist coming, he's going to be in power before he confirms that 7-year peace agreement. I believe the rapture will occur somewhere in between there. That's my take on it. I think before he confirms that 7-year peace agreement, we're going to know who he is as Christians. We're going to be warning the world. He's not going to like that at all. But he's going to be in a position that is very obvious to us that this is the guy. And I think he's very near. I think he's going to do some things that's really going to reveal him. And I think he's alive and well right now. I think he's on this earth. I think he's in a powerful position within government, possibly even in the American government. Possibly, we don't want to get caught too much. Like I said before, you never want to get so caught up in one point and make that your entire theology on it, or that your belief on that doctrine, or whatever it is on that particular event. One of them would be the Antichrist. You see this a lot happen. A lot of people will look and say, the Antichrist has to be from the literal revived Roman Empire of the land area of traditional the Roman Empire. I don't necessarily agree with that. Now, there's people that do, and obviously, hey, more power to them, and they may be absolutely right, and I can be totally wrong. So, I'm definitely open to that. I'm not opposed to it per se, but and I think the European Union perfectly fits in a lot of ways this revived Roman Empire. The woman rides on the beast, the imagery that they do, and so forth. The great, we see that Europe by and large, there's a lot of apostasy taking place and so forth. That would perfectly fit, what we would see. Daniel 9:26, Daniel 2:40 through 43, Daniel 8:9, so forth. It talks about, but Daniel 9:26 in particular talks about, this one who is to come, this prince who is to come, that would be the one who destroyed the temple. We know the second temple was destroyed, which we know that the Messiah had to come prior to the destruction of the second temple. And that it's referring to in that very verse that there would be another temple to come after that, a third temple, because we know in 2 Thessalonians he's going to go and declare himself to be God. So we know for sure that the Messiah had to come before and be cut off before the second temple. So for sure, there cannot be a Messiah to come after that, according to just that chapter 9 of Daniel. But we also look at others as well, where Jesus perfectly fitted. Isaiah 53 and others. But in any case, what I'm saying is with the revived Roman Empire prophecy, that he would come from those people. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the exact landmass of the revived Roman Empire, in my opinion. I think that it could just be that it is he brings about from the vestige of that empire, that it's a revived form of it, and this revived form of it can take on a number of different ways. It doesn't have to be exactly the same exact land area. It just means that I think it brings on that same type of what I want to say, the vestiges of that Roman Empire. It has similarities of it. It comes out of it. It draws its laws from it. It draws its a lot of its beliefs and teachings and so forth come out of it. Well, if you look at it, a lot of that comes out of Western society in general, but I think America perfectly fits in a lot of those roles. It has a Senate. It has a leader, what we call president. It's a lot like a Caesar. It has a massive military. It perfectly fits it. It's I'm not saying America is the revived Roman Empire. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we should always keep that open. We need to be flexible in these areas to understand that. Don't be so locked in. Say, hey, it has to be exactly the same geographical area. I think that's a mistake, a big mistake for us to do. It's simply saying, hey, there's this Antichrist figure, this little horn is going to come up late. Does that mean that its longevity, its life, is short? It came up, relatively later after you see really this, Europe emerge out of this broken up empire of Rome, and you had this little horn who comes up after it. Is it the Antichrist himself, or is it the empire which he will control? Comes up late. I mean, America's only been around for about less than 300 years, roughly in that ballpark. 208 years, whatever it is. So somewhere it's relatively short compared to 1,000 years. For a lot of these European nations. And you start going all the way back to the Roman Empire. You're talking about beyond 2,000 years, right at 2,000 years beyond. So, is that what it's talking about? And that's what I'm saying. We need to be a little flexible in these areas and understand that. Don't be so locked in and say, well, it just can't be America. Well, it can be America, really, and I think America could fit that role, especially when you start looking around at how America has influenced the world with a lot of terrible things. I mean, a lot of good things. There's been some really good things like missionaries, printing of Bibles, the gospel message, really being preached around the world. America's done a lot of wonderful things, but at the same time, you had the terrors, as it was, they're doing a lot of bad things and promoting it. Hollywood is, inundating the world with a lot of crazy stuff and a lot of evil, and it's influenced the world dramatically in a bad way. Not only that, you have, like I said, you have a presidency which kind of fits the Caesar role. You have a Senate kind of fits it. You look at the topography and the layout of Washington, D.C., it kind of fits Rome, and the look of it, and the Senate and everything. If you go back and look at some of their imagery and a lot of the same type of aspects of what was going on, of idolatry and everything else that was being promoted around the world, and the enforcement with its armies all around the known world at the time. A lot of that is very similar, eerily similar to what we see in America. America does fit that role, but this 10-nation coalition or 10-region coalition, it could be made up in its last final hours. Remember, these 10 are going to come up for a very short period of time. 1 hour, it says that they'll rule, and they'll give their power over to the Antichrist. So we should be looking for some kind of 10 coalition, either 10 nations, 10 nation states, or 10 regional states. It could be part of Europe and America and Canada and others. I mean, we shouldn't be so, it's going to be a global empire. It's going to be one that actually has global impact and influence around the world. And it will use primarily economic power to control, manipulate this marking of the beast, which will control the world in a lot of ways. So we should be looking for that, some kind of global entity made up of 10 regional. So I think after this Gog-Magog war, personally, I think we're going to see that, and I think that this will be so fearful to the world that they'll be looking for a new type of, and it could be an economic collapse as we know it, so the dollar may fail, and we may need a new global currency, one that we can get the restart going. And whoever's part of this, and obviously I think America will be a huge part of this, unless it's destroyed in some way, supernaturally, who knows, in this Gog-Magog war, or if it's damaged to the point where it can't sustain itself as it is, as a dominant power in the world, then naturally that would then go to the European Union if they somehow survive that. But if you really look around if it was to happen in the near future, America is definitely has to be at the top of the list. And with that, you would say the leaderships as well. And if this peace agreement they're talking about right now is, part of that, that 7-year peace agreement that the Antichrist would implement, you have to put America, who's preeminently the one doing it. I'm not saying Trump is the Antichrist, but maybe someone near him is, someone who's, in a powerful position. You could see somebody like Kushner or somebody like that. I'm not saying he's the Antichrist either, but I'm saying he could be. I mean, right now, if you refer to be on alert, as we're commanded to do, as I talked about in the previous video, if we're going to put people on that list of people you should be looking at, Kushner has to be at the top of the list. I mean, here's a guy who basically, he was the guy who gave the address at the movement of the embassy for America in Jerusalem, and more importantly, the acknowledgement of America that the preeminent Gentile power in the world, just like Rome was the preeminent Gentile power in the world that kicked Israel out of Jerusalem and Israel and renamed it and all this stuff, America, the revived form of Rome, it seems like, brought and acknowledged the sovereign control of Jerusalem over Israel again and throughout the world, and just came around and acknowledged it. And the person, if you watch the video, if you go back and watch that address, Trump gives the initial address in December 6th in 2017, but just shortly thereafter, very short period of time after that, we see Jared Kushner, his wife, and so forth, giving the address of the confirmation address, the final address, which surprised me that it wasn't Trump. Goes there, he gives the address of, we're acknowledging the sovereign control of Israel, and here's our embassy, and we're opening it up for, and making it in essence, the confirmation of what Trump previously stated. So to me, he's definitely the guy working behind the scenes. He's the one that's really going around doing the peace agreement right now. How's this all going to play out? We'll see at the end. Maybe in some way Trump was removed at the end, and in some way, and Kushner then steps into that void very quickly. That can happen, and it can happen really quickly. So we need, as Christians, we need to be aware of that possibility, and that would perfectly fit with if my ideal of the false prophet is right. I mean, you could see someone like Pence who claims to be a Christian, speaks softly, so forth, but actually speaks like a dragon. He's a guy who basically looks, Christian, humble, but all this stuff, but pious and so forth, but claims affiliation with Christ and so forth. But we don't know his true heart. I'm not saying he's the false prophet. I'm saying he could fit that role. Guy has political power, does things in the presence of the Antichrist, so forth, and ultimately, at the end of the day, will lead people into worship of the beast, who very well could wind up being the one who ultimately is sitting in the White House. That could happen. I'm not saying it is, but if I was running a scenario right now in my mind, which I am, that's what I'm looking for. And unless something happens dramatically where Europe emerges and has a combined state, super state, a united Europe, and suddenly one leader's elected, at that point, I probably would switch over and say, hey, I think it's going to come out of Europe then. It's one of those two areas. I just think America and some regional aspect of it, globalistically speaking. So you could wind up seeing like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, or whoever. I mean, you could see whatever. You could see portions of Europe fall into this whole category of this coalition of regional states that will make up this final empire, with it being headed up by the Antichrist figure sitting in nowhere else but the White House. I mean, you can see that. Like I said, we don't want to be so caught up in a tradition that we blind ourselves to what God's ultimate plan is, that this revived form of Rome will be different. Like it says, when he gets back into it, and he talks about this mingling of the miry clay with the steel, as it tells us, it comes out of the legs of iron, going back to the Nebuchadnezzar prophecy of the empire's statue. You gotta remember, it's one that tries to mingle itself, but it just doesn't adhere. There's a loose federation, and could this be indicating that there won't be perfect harmony in that sense? At the end of the day, the Antichrist is the one who's going to lead it. The Antichrist is the one who's going to declare worship. The Antichrist is the one who's going to come on the scene suddenly and say, hey, I'm the guy. And he's going to deceive the world with some miraculous stuff. Now, I think we'll know who he is, and I think we're quickly drawing into that. So that's my take on where we could be going. Some key points that we can look at that I'll reference for you. I don't know if we'll have time to look at them all, but we'll definitely try to get it. Just says that he will magnify himself to be equal with God. Daniel 8:11. So we'll jump over here to Daniel chapter 8 and just kind of look at some key points here. And we'll see what, so Daniel chapter 8. All right. So Daniel 8 says that, it's talking about the little horn prophecy, basically. So it starts off in 8 as where it's talking about a prophecy of the coming empires. It's kind of picking up on that. You have the ram, which is obviously Medo-Persia. You have the goat, Alexander, Grecian Empire. Then you get into these kind of three would be like the Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire emerges out of that, obviously, with Papal Catholic Popery and so forth that basically continued that on, and then you have this kind of revived Roman Empire of sorts. So you're talking about a massive amount of time that they've been in control in some way, form, or fashion. It kind of faded away as the Reformation, obviously, and they lost a lot of power around the world, but they retained the structures of it. Well, that's so it could very well be something like that. And again, America emerging out of it. People forget there's 65, 70 million Roman Catholics in America, maybe more, maybe as many as 100 million. So with the influx of people from South America, Central America, and so forth, which are heavily populated by Roman Catholics, I mean, you can see the influences there, So just keep that in mind as well. But anyway, he gets into this little horn, verse 9. He goes on to say, it says, one of them came forth, a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards a beautiful land. It grew up to the host of heaven, and caused some of the host and some of the stars to fall from the earth, and trampled them down. And it magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host. Think about that for a little bit. I mean, talk about arrogance, unbelievable. But if you're empowered by Satan, you're possessed by Satan, I guess, you believe you can do anything, and it'd be easy to kind of fall into that belief system, that ideal. And he goes on to say, and it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down, and on account of transgression, the host will be given over to the horn along with the regular sacrifice. Obviously, it's talking about a rebuilt temple, and that it's going to end the sacrifice from occurring. Now, some people say, hey, this was fulfilled, and this could be a partial fulfillment of what takes place, but I think it's clearly saying that this little horn figure, in my opinion, is not Antiochus Epiphanes, but will be the Antichrist. And he goes on to say, and on account of the transgressions, the host will be given over to the horn and regular sacrifice, and it will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. Then I heard a holy one speaking, another holy one, and that particular one was speaking, how long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply while the transgression and causes horror, so that it allows both the holy place and the host to be trampled. And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the holy place will be properly restored. Kind of goes on, talks about a little bit more, and then he gets into verses, gives the identity of the ram and the goat and so forth, which are pretty amazing prophecies in and of themselves, especially when you get into like who's it talking about, but verse 23 is kind of where we're wanting to get to and forward. And it basically says, in the latter period of their rule, when the transgressors have run their course, a king will arise, insolent and skilled in intrigue. His power will be mighty, but not by his own power. Well, we know he's going to be indwelled by Satan, Revelation 13:2. He says, and he will destroy to an extraordinary degree, which we know from Revelation as well. Nearly 2/3 or more, depending on how you read those judgments, of mankind will die during this period of time. And it says that he will destroy mighty men and the holy people. And so he's going to do that. And we know that from Revelation as well, 13:7 and others, where it talks about him persecuting the Jewish people, but also those who come to faith in Jesus Christ. So remember that those tribulation saints are going to be martyred, and we see that picked up in and spoken of specifically in Revelation chapter 20, the early part of that. He goes, and through his shrewdness he will cause deceit to succeed by his influence, and he will magnify himself in his heart, and he will destroy many while they are at ease. He will even oppose the prince of princes, Jesus Christ, but he will be broken, which we know takes place, Revelation 19:19 and so forth. It says without human agency, so Revelation 19:19 we see that. And anyway, he goes on to say, the vision of the evenings and mornings which has been told to you are true, but keep it secret. So at this time it wasn't being revealed, but now we see, if you look at Revelation, just the opposite is spoken of. He says we're to reveal it, give it to the church. This is to be given to us. So we know that he fits a lot of this, and we know that the Antichrist could come on the scene at any time, because a lot of these prophecies have been literally fulfilled. So we should be looking for this guy to come on the scene and ultimately fulfill the final aspects of Revelation chapter 13 and Revelation 19, which ultimately will be his demise. When he brings them down to the valley of judgment, he will send out these demonic spirits from Revelation 16, and they will basically seduce the kings of the world or leaders of the world to bring their armies to oppose the return of Jesus Christ himself, which again makes me seem to think that there's some type of alien connection or whatever, or multidimensionality or whatever he's going to claim to deceive the world into saying that this guy is, of some foreign, power, or to make people believe and worship him as God. I mean, you have to think that there's going to be something supernatural to the degree that we haven't really fully grasped yet. But I think, that makes sense. The whole extraterrestrial thing makes perfect sense. So anyway, that's kind of like in a short synopsis of who this Antichrist figure is. Ultimately, he's going to become a person who's claiming to be God, and he's going to deceive the world. And we should know who he is before we step off into the tribulation period. I think he's going to be revealed. He will give himself away, and it'll be before he makes that declaration of the 7-year peace agreement. I think the church will be around to see it, and hey, that's what we need to be looking for. Anyway, God bless, be safe, continue your study of the Lord, be faithful in it, be looking, be ready as Christ commanded, and hope to see you, if not in this world, I'll see you in the kingdom to come. God bless.